Donald J. Trump on the telephone. Mr. President, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you.
It is great to have you, and I want to say that Americans today have a lot of questions this morning, Mr. President. We hope that you can be as precise as possible and we can get through as much as possible this morning. Thank you for talking with us in the first interview since Election Day. Mr. President, you've said many times that this election was rigged, that there was much fraud, and the facts are on your side. Let's start there. Please go through the facts. Characterize what took place.
Well, first of all, I have to start by saying the whole world is watching, and nobody can believe what they're saying. And you have leaders of countries that call me and say, that's the most messed up election we've ever seen. You start with these machines that have been suspect, not allowed to be used in Texas, the Dominion machines, where tremendous reports have been put out. We have affidavits from many people talking about what went on with machines. They had glitches. You know what a glitch is? A glitch is supposed to be when a machine breaks down. Well, no, we had glitches where they moved thousands of votes from my account to Biden's account. And these are glitches. So they're not glitches, they're theft. They're fraud, absolute fraud. And there were many of them, but obviously most of them, tremendous amounts, got by without us catching. We got lucky to catch them. I think we caught 4 or 5 glitches of about 5,000 votes each, and different states. And again, they're not glitches. That was fraud, and they got caught. But for the most part, they got away with it. And what happened, if you watched the election, I was called by the biggest people saying, congratulations, political people. Congratulations, sir, you just won the election. It was 10 o'clock, and you looked at the numbers, and I'm sure you felt that way. This election was over, and then they did dumps. They call them dumps, big, massive dumps in Michigan and Pennsylvania and all over. If you take a look at, you just take a look at just about every state that we're talking about, every swing state that we're talking about, and they did these massive dumps of votes, and all of a sudden I went from winning by a lot to losing by a little. And in some cases, it took a period of time to do it. North Carolina, they couldn't do it. I won North Carolina. They couldn't, somehow they had a better system, but they couldn't do anything. I believe they tried. We have affidavits, but they couldn't do anything with really a great place, North Carolina. We appreciate the incredible work they put in, and we won. But they did tens of thousands of Biden votes. And all of a sudden, I went from, and I could tell you the people that were calling me, congratulating me, people that you know very well, friends of your show, they said it's over. I said, well, I hear bad things about the machines. I hear bad things about corruption. One of your great pollsters who actually got it right, you know the gentleman I'm talking about, he said, well, Trump is going to win Pennsylvania, but you have to allow at least 5% for cheating because they cheat. And that's in Philadelphia and various areas around Philadelphia. They cheat, and they cheat like crazy. So we have him winning Pennsylvania, but you have to allow 5 points for cheating. This is a terrible thing that's happened. The mail-in ballots are a disaster. They said millions and millions and millions of mail-in ballots. I'm sure you know people that got 2, 3, or 4, because I do, where they said, we got 4 ballots. They got one at a country home. Dead people were seeing ballots. But even worse, dead people were applying to get a ballot. They were making application to get ballots. Many. And we're not talking about 10 people. We're talking, there are a lot of dead people that so-called voted in this election. But dead people were, in some cases, in many, many cases, thousands of cases, voted. But also, dead people made application to vote. They were dead 10 years, 15 years, and they actually made application. This is total fraud, and how the FBI and Department of Justice, I don't know, maybe they're involved, but how people are allowed to get away from this stuff, with this stuff is unbelievable. This election was rigged. This election was a total fraud, and it continues to be as they hide. And the problem we have, we go to judges, and people don't want to get involved. The media doesn't even want to cover it. I mean, you're doing something. You're actually very brave because you're doing something. The media doesn't want to talk about it. They know how fraudulent this is. It's no different than Hunter. It's no different than Hunter. They don't want to talk about Hunter. So they totally closed it off, big tech and the media, other than the New York Post, as you remember, which took a lot of heat. It was terminated. It was terminated from, I guess, Twitter, maybe Facebook. But it's a situation the likes of which we don't have freedom of the press in this country. We have suppression by the press. They suppress. You know, you can't have a scandal if nobody reports about it. This is the greatest fraud in the history of our country from an electoral standpoint. And I guess you could build it up bigger than an electoral standpoint. What's bigger from an electoral standpoint? What's bigger than this? This is the essence of our country. This is the whole ball game. And they cheated. Joe Biden did not get 80 million votes. Now, we were planning, I got 63 million votes 4 years ago and won quite handily in the electoral college. Won quite handily. We did very well. I got 63. We were hoping to get 68 or so, and we felt that was a path to an easy victory. I got 74 million votes, the largest in the history of a sitting president. So much more, many millions of more than anyone thought, you know, than we were even trying to get. And everybody said, this is over. I'm telling you, at 10 o'clock, everybody thought it was over. And then the phony mail-ins started coming in. But just so you understand, I got 74 million votes. It was over. And then mail-ins started happening. Glitches started happening. This election was rigged. This election is a total fraud.
Mr. President, these are obviously very serious charges, and I want to walk through them and ask you how you will prove this in the courts, because as you know, what I've been saying on the air is that elections are the reason that our young men and women go on battlefields across the world and in some cases lose their lives.
That's right.
Because they believe that their vote, my vote, matters just as much as your vote. And if that is not true, this is a very serious turning point for America. So this is no longer about you, President Trump. This is about America.
That's
and
right.
Many people agree with you. According to Reuters, 68% of Republicans and 28% of all Americans, that includes Democrats, believe there was fraud in this election. So let's go through some of the states, the 6 states that your team is challenging. What specific strategy does your legal team take going forward? Let's start with Pennsylvania. I know you said that you have a pile of affidavits. That's part of the evidence. What other evidence can you talk about that will enable you to prove this in court in the coming weeks, sir?
Well, we're trying to put the evidence in, and the judges won't allow us to do it. We are trying, we have so much evidence. You probably saw on Wednesday of last week, we had a hearing in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It was an incredible hearing, unbelievable witnesses, highly respected people that were truly aggrieved. A woman came in and she wanted to vote, and they said, no, I'm sorry, you can't vote. You've already voted. Your ballot's in. She said, no, I want to vote on November 3rd. I've been waiting for so long to vote. I'm so proud. I want to vote. They said, your ballot's in. I'm sorry. And that was the story, and she was aggrieved. And you have many people like that, many people like that, at a level that nobody would even believe. And that's where it is, Bria. That's one story. By the way, that's one story out of so many different stories. You know, the poll watchers, and this is true with all of the states, just about that you're talking about. I think all of them. They weren't allowed to have poll watchers. The Democrats and thugs. Now, I'm not talking about saying, could you please move over? They threw them out of the counting rooms. They weren't allowed to be in. They threw them outside in many cases. You heard the story with the people that went out and sent for binoculars because they wouldn't allow them to watch. And during that period of time, a lot of bad things happened. Then they closed, as you know, they closed up the voting. And then unexpectedly, they closed up all of the counting. Unexpectedly, new ballots came in. And it was all new numbers being added. We have pictures and we have evidence of new ballots being brought into counting rooms. Maria, there's never been anything like this in history. And it all started with the mail-in, but it also goes to Dominion, it goes to a lot of things. But the mail-in, millions and millions of ballots being shipped all over. And ballots, as you know, there were a lot of ballots where it was just Biden on top. They didn't do anything else because they were in a rush. And from what everybody is saying, and from what I don't think we even have to prove this, they say that I was doing so much better than they thought that they panicked and they started just doing ballot after ballot very quickly and just checking the Biden name on top. They didn't have time. So you have all these ballots with just one name check. People don't vote that way. People don't vote that way. They want to vote against taxes, and they want to vote for judges, and they want to vote for a lot of other things that you have on a ballot, different races, including Congress. And they were just checked on top. Tremendous numbers of ballots like that. And that was done for the sake of speed. We have stories that are unbelievable, but we're not allowed to put in our proof. They say you don't have standing. I said I'd like to file to the lawyers. I would like to file one nice, big, beautiful lawsuit talking about this and many other things with tremendous proof. We have affidavits. We have hundreds and hundreds of affidavits, like the people that you saw the other day in Pennsylvania, willing to sign under penalty of perjury. You go to jail. Willing to sign. Unlike Comey, who didn't go to jail for lying, by the way, and McCabe, who didn't go to jail for lying, which is an amazing thing to me. We might as well bring it up. But under perjury, you go to jail. We have hundreds, getting to be thousands. They're coming in all the time. And these are respected people. These are people that are putting their lives at risk. And they don't want to take the affidavits. Then they say we don't have proof. I wanted to file one suit, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, against, and put everything in a one simple suit. And they say, sir, you don't have standing. I say, I don't have standing. You mean as President of the United States, I don't have standing. What kind of a court system is this? And the judges stay away from it. There is out there, Maria, because everyone knows you gave numbers. I had a number, 79%, it just came out. 79% of the Republicans think that the election was a fraud. And I hear 35, 40% of the Democrats, but they're not going to put it down anyway because they're not going to say we think it. But I think most of them think it was a fraud. I watched you with Kelly. Look at the election. Look at the election you have coming up right now. You're using the same garbage machinery, Dominion, and she's going around Abrams. She's going around screaming that she's got 800 or 850,000 ballots. What kind of an election is it? She's going around collecting votes. What kind of an election is this? What kind of a country are we living in now?
That's right.
Where you can vote for months ahead of schedule. And then the other thing we have, and Justice Alito, highly respected, a great man, Justice Alito seems to have big problems, but the election ended, and they gave people an extension to vote. That's never happened before. In other words, the election ended, but we'll give you more time if you want to vote. And what I understand is they didn't think it was good either, so they backdated all these ballots that came in. They had people, and we have affidavits on that too, they had people backdating ballots so that if somebody came in the 4th or 5th or 6th, which was illegal because the legislature didn't approve it, which everything has to be approved by the legislature. And they had judges making deals, and they had electoral officials making deals, like this character in Georgia who's a disaster. And the governor's done nothing. He's done absolutely nothing. I'm ashamed that I endorsed him. But I look at what's going on. It's so terrible. But what happened in this election, Maria, I can't imagine has ever happened before. They stuffed the ballot boxes. I've been hearing that expression for many years. You have to stuff the ballot. They stuffed the ballot boxes, and they used COVID as a means to stuff the ballot boxes. Joe Biden did not get 16 million more votes than Barack Hussein Obama. He didn't get it. Joe Biden did not get 14 million more votes than Hillary Clinton. And by the way, he didn't beat Obama in the black communities. You go to some of these communities where Obama is very, very popular, and he beats him in some of these communities, but all throughout the rest of the United States, in a black community, he does actually poorly. He doesn't do very well. But he beats Obama in swing states. Now think of that. He beat Obama in swing states. You know that didn't happen. They stuffed the ballot box. Everybody knows that.
This is some of the impossible statistics that we have found, and this is from the Federalist article. They call it Biden magic, and they list a number of ways that Joe Biden magically outperformed election norms. They include 80 million votes, including a record Black and Hispanic turnout for you, President Trump, winning despite losing most bellwether counties. Typically, when you win the bellwether counties like you did, the president wins. Biden trailed Clinton, except in a select few cities. Biden won despite Democrat losses everywhere else. In the House, Kevin McCarthy is still celebrating wins in the House of Representatives. Biden also overcame your commanding primary vote. So there are certainly statistic impossibilities, and the Federalist calls it magic, as you referred to. Mr. President, will you be able to prove that the computers can circumvent the controls that are in place? A lot of people say, oh, no, we have controls in place. There are paper ballots. The computers cannot get through the controls that are in place. Can you do that? Yeah. And secondly, in terms of Pennsylvania, your team got a blow on Friday, an appeals court rejecting the request to block the certification of Pennsylvania's election results. Your attorneys have said they will appeal to the Supreme Court. Give us your timing on that. Will you get a different outcome in the next couple of days? Will we be hearing a victory in Pennsylvania in the next couple of days?
Okay, well, let me just talk about the Federalist paper just for a second, because you mentioned it. There are 5 points, and it was written brilliantly but sarcastically, because they were saying he must be a great campaigner because he lost here, he lost here, he lost here, and he won the election. If a president, this is over a long, many period, hundreds of years, 100 years or something, they went into all of the elections. If you win one of the 5 points, I won all 5. If you win one of the 5 points, you become president. You automatically, sitting president gets reelected. I won all 5 and I still lost. There was only one reason for that: fraud, stuffing the ballot boxes, all of the things that they did. There's only one reason, and everybody knows it. And your numbers are much different. This country, I cannot believe it. There's more spirit. I see more spirit right now. This country cannot have fake elections like we have fake news, like we have all of the things happening with big tech. There's a tremendous move on to repeal Section 230. Big tech has no liability. They can do whatever they want. It's ridiculous. But there's a big move to do that. I don't know if the politicians have the guts to do it, but they're hurting themselves very badly. There are so many different things. We'll be appealing different cases. It's not only our case. Mike Kelly, great congressman, as you know, from Pennsylvania, has a great case. He won. Well, he had a good decision. Then he went a step above, and they turned him down. I think that was in Pennsylvania. I think he's got a great appeal to the United States Supreme Court. Act 77, where the legislature is supposed to approve all this stuff, and they had it approved by local officials or a judge. I think it's a great case, but I'm sure they'll be appealing too. They have a fantastic case. A lot of the cases that have been lost haven't been our cases. They're people that are aggrieved that went out and filed lawsuits because they saw things happening that they've never seen before. A poll watcher, I have a lot of respect for Ken Starr, and I watched him on your show, actually. And a poll watcher is like a sacred person in the world of politics. They call them partisan poll because they're like a Republican poll watcher, a Democrat poll watcher. They watch the votes being counted. It's so important. It is like the most important. Otherwise, people will cheat, unfortunately. So poll watchers are very important. Our poll watchers didn't just get set back, which they did. They got thrown out of buildings in different states. They were thrown out, and this is a well-coordinated attack because you don't do it with everybody. Maybe it would happen in Philadelphia, but it wouldn't happen in Detroit. Now, Detroit and Philadelphia, Milwaukee, these are among the most dishonest political places in years. Just look at the past history. I'm not being rude to anybody. These are highly corrupt locations politically. But poll watchers were walked out by thugs out of the building. And you have it all over the news. We could give you everything you need. All you have to do is local news covers it actually much differently than national news. National news doesn't like covering anything that would be like that. They do not report the news. That's why I call them fake news. But they've never been fake like they are now. Now they're a disgrace. But the news is the enemy. Our newspapers, major newspapers, and major networks are truly the enemy of the people in this country. They're very dangerous, and big tech is making them even more dangerous. But they got rid of poll watchers.
I'm going to get back to big tech because this is a critical part of this story, Mr. President. But if you take out the contested swing states electoral votes, you're back down to President Trump having 232 electoral votes and Joe Biden having 227. That is if you strip out the 6 states with the legal challenges. So is the thinking here that because of the various ballot issues that the Supreme Court will rule that the vote is tainted, and that will mean that they have to take votes away from Biden and not certify? Is that the thinking? And secondly, what's your timing on this, Mr. President? Because we've got some notable election dates here that I want to ask you what you believe you consider to be your drop-dead date in terms of proving this case. Is it December 18th when the states finalize elector appointments, or when electors cast votes in each state? Is it the vice president receiving electoral votes? Is it the House and Senate counting electoral votes? Or is it Inauguration Day, January 20th? How do you see it?
Well, I don't want to give you an actual date. A lot of people say the 18th, or they say the 14th, or they say January 20th. I'm not going to say a date, but I will say we have to move very fast. We have been moving fast. And, you know, look, when you say, is it tainted? Everyone knows it's tainted. Everyone knows that the poll watchers were thrown out of buildings. Everyone knows that people were not allowed to vote when they walked in so preciously, so beautifully to vote. A elderly woman, we have a deposition, was told, who longed to vote, looked forward to the day of November 3rd, was told when she got in there, I'm sorry you voted. And then they give her another ballot to sign, which they don't use because she already voted. That's how brazen they are. They'll actually vote people knowing that there's a good chance that those people will come in. And there were thousands of those people. And by the way, just to set the record straight, because a couple of these cases were dismissed because they didn't have enough votes, enough bad, tainted votes, so that you'd overturn the state. No. In all cases, we have many times, I don't even know where the judges would have gotten that information. We have thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of votes more than we need. In other words, if I lost a state by 9,000 votes, or if I lost Georgia by, let's say, 12,000 votes, we have tens of thousands more votes in there. We don't have it where we found 9 dead people, and therefore we want you to turn over the state and give us those electoral votes. In all cases, and yet one judge was saying, we didn't have the votes to turn it over, therefore it's meaningless. In other words, if you don't have the votes, I understand that. If you had far fewer votes than the amount. Now, in one way, you could also say it's so fraudulent when they're voting for dead people, and when dead people are signing applications, meaning they're not, meaning somebody else is fraudulently signing. I mean, in the name of a dead person, well, that tells you a lot. But we actually have thousands of votes, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of votes, more than we need in every swing state that we're talking about.
Mr. President, have you received from your Chief of Cyber Command any briefing on electronic interference from either internal or external influences? Have you received this briefing?
We're dealing with John Ratcliffe, who's fantastic. We're dealing with other people, and we don't always get, they've been there for a long time, Maria. It's a long story. It's a long story. We're disappointed that more people didn't get involved because this is a fraud. This is a fraud against the American people. It's a fraud against the United States of America. And we're disappointed that some people don't get more involved. Like this character on 60 Minutes, they're putting him on. This guy, we had so many things. He's talking about how honest the election is. Well, how come there are thousands of dead people voting? How come there are all these other people voting that shouldn't be voting? How come we find thousands of votes? How come poll watchers, every vote that went through an election area, what they call an accounting area, where our poll watchers were locked out of the building, outside, standing outside, or standing so far away that you couldn't see, where they literally went out and said for binoculars, you're supposed to be right next to that vote. Well, every one of them is a fraud. So how can he say, I mean, other than he's an anti-Trumper, how can this guy say that there was no fraud? 60 Minutes, by the way, never called us for comment. You know, they do a piece on somebody. They don't call us for comment. But when you don't have a poll watcher and thousands of votes are passing that area where you're supposed to have a poll watcher to see that everything's on the up and up, well, those are votes that count toward us. Those are thousands of votes. And they were done in many of the states, swing states that we're talking about.
Where is the DOJ and the FBI in all of this, Mr. President? You have laid out.
That's what I want to know.
Serious
Where are they?
here.
Where's
Should
AG
this
Barr?
be something that the FBI is investigating? Are they?
Missing in
Is the
action.
DOJ investigating?
Missing in action. Can't tell you where they are. I ask, are they looking at it? Everyone says yes, they're looking at it. Look, where are they with Comey, McCabe, and all these other people? You know, I said I'll stay out of it. I wish I didn't make that statement. There's no reason really why I have to. But where are they with Comey, with McCabe, with Brennan, with all these people? They lied to Congress. They lied. They leaked. They spied in our campaign. I see Carter Page is bringing a lawsuit. That's good news. Where are they with all of this stuff? And, you know, what happened to Durham? Where's Durham? So, you know, you're asking me a question. These people have been there a long time. And I know FBI, and FBI is great at the levels that we talk about. But it's inconceivable. You would think if you're in the FBI or Department of Justice, this is the biggest thing you could be looking at. Where are they? I've not seen anything. I mean, they just keep moving along, and they go on to the next president. They've been there for a long time. People don't understand this. They've been there for a long time. Some of them have served a lot of different presidents, and they have their own views. All I can say is I haven't heard, with all of the fraud that's taken place, nobody's come to me and said, oh, the FBI's nabbed, you know, the people that are doing this scheme. The FBI is looking at Dominion, which nobody even knows where they're based, which nobody even knows where the votes are counted. You know, the votes in Dominion, they say, are counted in foreign countries, okay? Can you believe this? Now, Dominion is also based in a number of foreign countries. One of them is Canada. And Canada refuses to use Dominion, and they're based there. They won't get anywhere near. Texas will not get anywhere near Dominion. I spoke with the Attorney General. I spoke with a lot of different people. Texas, you should see the reports that Texas wrote on Dominion. They wouldn't use them. They wouldn't, under any circumstance, they wouldn't use them. So, you know, as you probably have heard, but Canada does paper votes. And the only way this is going to be safe is paper votes. Even the mailmen, look, the mailmen are carrying thousands of ballots back and forth, back and forth. There are many mailmen that are in big trouble right now for selling ballots, getting rid of ballots. This is the craziest thing you've ever seen. But many ballots with the name Trump on were thrown out. You've read that. They found ballots in a river with the name Trump on from the military. They were signed, and they were floating in a river. They found ballots under rocks that had the name Trump on. They were signed with Trump. We won the election easily. There's no way Joe Biden got 80 million votes. I just said there's no way Joe Biden beat Barack Obama in the black communities of various cities, and then he did very badly compared to Obama in other cities throughout the United States. There's no way it happened. This election was a fraud. It was a rigged election.
This is disgusting, and we cannot allow America's election to be corrupted. We cannot. So
That's right.
If you believe you can prove that the computers...
We better prove it. We better prove it. We got no time to do it. We've got to prove it.
Before we leave the subject of Durham, I feel like something happened in September. I don't know what happened, but we were all expecting Durham to come out and AG Barr to be aggressive. He told me back in June that mail-in ballots open the floodgates of fraud. Why wasn't anything done about it? Why weren't there surveillance cameras to shoot
Exactly.
what we know now to be trucks backing up ballots, for example, in Michigan? And finally, this question, will you appoint a special counsel to investigate and to continue the investigating into what took place in the 2016 election? You mentioned Jim Comey and Andrew McCabe not facing accountability. Will you appoint a special counsel?
By the way, Comey and McCabe, that's the least of it. You talk about the Logan Act. They used the Logan Act on General Flynn, who I was very proud to pardon. But they wanted to use, and they did use the Logan Act on General Flynn. And you know where that started. Look, this whole thing is a terrible situation. This should have never been allowed to happen. And, it's an embarrassment to a country. All over the world, they're talking about it. And, yeah, I would consider a special prosecutor, because this is not a counsel. It sounds so nice. I went through 3 years of a special counsel prosecutor. I call prosecutor because it's a much more accurate term. They spent $48 million, Weissman and all Trump haters. They spent $48 million. That was the Mueller investigation. They went through taxes. They went through everything. For $48 million, you look at everything, and they found no collusion, no nothing. They found nothing. After friends of mine said, you must be the cleanest guy in the world, because nobody could have gone through an examination like that. And then they announced we have no collusion. There was none. And Marco Rubio said, President Trump with the Senate Judiciary hearings absolutely was totally uninvolved. It had nothing to do with Russia. Okay, it was a Russia hoax. It was just pure hoax. It was a pure hoax and a very sad thing for the country. And as much as I've done, and I think I've done more than virtually in 4 years, more than any president in history, with Space Force and tax cuts, biggest regulation cuts in history, biggest tax cuts in history, the vets, the VA. As much as I've done, I could have done more, except that I was under investigation for almost from the day I came down the escalator with what turned out to be our future First Lady, who's very popular, by the way. But when I came down the escalator from very shortly thereafter, and you know this almost better than anybody else, I was under investigation. Now, at the time, I didn't know it, but I was. All they do is investigate. Then they send everything they have into New York. When I beat them in the federal, They send everything into New York. Oh, let them take a crack at it. What's going on in this country is not to be believed. I could say some very strong words where this country's gone over the last 10 or 15 years, but it's not to be believed. And we were changing it. If I got in or get in, we will very quickly have deals with Iran. But now they're going to give the ship away. They'll pay hundreds of billions of dollars to Iran. China didn't want me in because we were beating China so badly. And now they're going to go. China actually stated, you probably heard it 2 days ago, we want to deal with the United States, but we don't like America first. And now the Democrats are saying, oh, we won't use America first. America first is exactly what it is. America first. We have to take care of ourselves first, and then we can help others. But we have to take care of ourselves first, or we won't have a country.
That's right.
But that's what we are, Maria. It's a very sad thing. Why isn't the FBI all over the place? They're not. They're not. It's an incredible thing. They're not. And it's an embarrassment.
And he's going to win
our country.
anyway, and it's going to be a freaking miracle.
Confirm that your cases will reach the Supreme Court in the next 2 weeks. Confirm that for us. And also, what do you want to say to people like business people, like, for example, Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan, who said it's time to move on and unify and accept the results? Or Stephen Schwarzman, who's a supporter of you, who said soon we will have to move on. And what about the ramifications of the Supreme Court agreeing with you? Are you worried that we could see riots? And, when you have people who don't agree with you, they think it's just fine to throw bricks through your window and force small businesses to board up. Are you worried about unrest and rioting should the Supreme Court agree with you?
So the people that we have and the people that are so committed to this, like I've never seen, I think almost they have more spirit now than they do even before the election. All of the people, these are not rioting types, but they are stronger, they are smarter, they are more successful,
Antifa is bad news. Nobody wants to do anything with Antifa except me. If I wasn't here, Antifa would be running this country right now. They'd be running the country. They always like to blame the radical right. It's not the radical right. It's the radical left, and it's largely Antifa and groups like this, and nobody wants to even talk about them. Nobody wants to talk about what they're doing in Portland and what they're doing in Chicago and what they're doing in New York. And they club people over the heads when nobody's looking, and then nobody talks about it. It's a disgrace. It's absolutely a disgrace. And if I'm not here, I'm sort of your wall. You know, we're completing the wall like I said I would. Everyone said you'd never be able to do it. That's another one I got built. And it's had a huge impact. We have the best numbers we've ever had on the southern border. People come in, but they come in legally. But the wall is almost complete. And to be honest, we look and we see all of the different problems. MS-13, we take care of it. We bring thousands of MS-13 back to where they came from. We don't want them here. We bring them back. But Antifa is a real problem in this country, and nobody wants to take them on. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful.
Which cases specifically will reach the Supreme Court and when?
Well, the problem is it's hard to get into the Supreme Court. I've got the best Supreme Court advocates, lawyers, that want to argue the case if it gets there. But they said it's very hard to get a case up there. Can you imagine Donald Trump, President of the United States, files a case, and I probably can't get a case, and we have tremendous proof. We have hundreds and hundreds of affidavits, sworn affidavits, and it's very hard to get a case to the Supreme Court. That's what everybody's fighting for. I thought that Mike Kelly, congressman, I thought they had a great case, and it got thrown out the other day. Now they'll appeal it, I hope, to the Supreme Court. They have a great case because the legislature didn't make the decision on this stuff, and they have a great case. But you have to appeal it. The big thing is, can you get it? We could have a great case. We do have a great case. We have the greatest case ever. We have many different forms of fraud. It's not just one form. It's ballot fraud. We have it all documented, and we have tremendous evidence. So we'll say, we want to show you the evidence, and then the judge will say, they didn't show us the evidence. That's what we want to do. We want to have hearings to show the evidence. The time people started seeing evidence was in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, when people started showing it.
That's
You
right.
probably saw that. Great people came forward with affidavits, signed affidavits. We have hundreds of people like that. Hundreds and hundreds. They make it like we don't have evidence. We have evidence all over the place. And by the way, you asked about the machine dominion. Yeah, I hope so, for the good of the country. It will take a brave judge or a brave legislature. You know, we're Rudy Giuliani, you know, he takes a lot of heat. Let me tell you, that guy he has guts, because we've had lawyers that were afraid to go forward because they were threatened, viciously threatened. We have lawyers, Maria, good lawyers, that had to leave the case in the middle because they were threatened, absolutely threatened, both psychologically and otherwise. And they left the case. Numerous firms, good firms, doing a good job, and all of a sudden we end up having to scramble to get a case ready. What's going on is nobody's ever seen anything like this. It will take a brave judge or justice or both. Supreme Court
Well,
justice.
it sounds like if you can't be heard by the Supreme Court, you lose. Do you believe you will win this?
We should be heard by the Supreme Court. Something has to be able to get up there. Otherwise, what is the Supreme Court? If election fraud at the highest level anyone's ever seen, with tremendous evidence, in a presidential election, if a man gets 80 million votes, and he's not even close to that number, Maria, look, again, I don't want to bore you with this. He did not beat President Obama in areas where they said he beat President Obama. In fact, the black community had very little enthusiasm for Joe Biden. You know that. You've been reporting on that. Very little enthusiasm for Joe Biden. The Hispanic community has very little enthusiasm for Joe Biden. He didn't get those numbers. And by the way, I was the most successful with the Hispanic and the black communities. I was unbelievably successful. You saw that record numbers.
Yeah. Oh, we've talked about that a
How did Joe Biden
lot.
get all these votes? How did he get up to 80 million? How did he get up to 80 million
Yeah.
votes? And again, I told you, we wanted to get 67, 68 votes, and we felt we had it made. John McLaughlin couldn't believe it. John McLaughlin's a legitimate pollster, not one
Yes.
that says I'm 17 points down in Wisconsin and then end up really effectively winning. They tried to take it away. We'll see what happens with Wisconsin, but essentially winning. 17 points a couple of days before the election, and I really won the state. They were 17 points off. Think of that, 17 points off. This is also, by the way, this is also corruption, Maria. This is also corruption because they're not.
I want to ask you two more questions before we wrap up. I want to get your take on how much of an influence on this election was big tech and the media. We know that the media declared Joe Biden president-elect on November 7th. They set the narrative that the election was over and discredited any challenges. Big tech and the media have been censoring you and getting more aggressive at it. The President of the United States and others being censored literally during a constitutional crisis. What can you do about it?
It's massively powerful. It's massively corrupt. The media and big tech.
The Ministry of
Section 230
Truth.
should be taken out because that's their protection that was given.
That's what we should all be calling it right now.
But it's
George
it's
Orwell
a massive
told us all about it.
Form of corruption and silence and suppression. Like, for instance, this conversation that we're having right now. They will only take if there's something that was slightly off, like you or I mispronounced a word, or you or I. That will be the story. It is, and yet they won't talk about Hunter Biden. Never talk about Hunter Biden. Stole millions and millions of dollars, and if you do talk about him, they take you off their platforms. No, it's massively corrupt. I think what happened is in 2016, where I won, I caught him by surprise. I got him by surprise.
That's right.
And they said, we're not going to let that. I don't know why, though, because business has never been better. We got hit by a pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, I had the highest numbers in history. And even now, the stock market just hit an all-time high during a pandemic. And what did I do? I came up with vaccines that people didn't think would have for 5 years. And we have them.
Operation Warp Speed.
I mean, think of what we've done. And nobody's done it like this. And we're doing much better than Europe. By the way, you never hear about Europe. We're doing better than the rest of the world. We're doing better. But we have 2 vaccines. We're coming up with another one. Johnson & Johnson's coming up with one. We'll have 4 or 5 great vaccines 4 or 5 years ahead of schedule. People hardly talk about that. And they'll try and say that Biden came up with the vaccines. But actually, I watched a few of the shows last night. I got to see a couple of them, and Mark Levine was fantastic last night. Mark was great, talking about the vaccines. His show was great. I guess they had it on like last night sometime, and he was great, and so many others are great. Sean Hannity, he knows, he gets it. But Mark Levin said it very well last night. But you have people that get it, but people are afraid to speak out. So it is the power of the media. There's no question about it. But with all that power, we won the race. This was corruption because we got far more votes than him. We got 74 million votes. He did not get anywhere near 80. And that's 74 before they threw away, they threw away ballots. They threw away many Trump ballots. That's the easiest way they could cheat. But we got 74 million votes. He didn't get anywhere close to 80 million votes.
And you believe you will be able to prove this in the coming weeks?
Well, I'm going to use 125% of my energy to do it. You need a judge that's willing to hear a case. You need a Supreme Court that's willing to make a real big decision based on everything that it's not like you're going to change my mind. In other words, my mind will not change in 6 months. There was tremendous cheating here. Boxes were brought in. The mail-in vote is a disaster. And by the way, if Republicans allow it to happen, you'll never have another Republican
That's right.
elected in the history of this country.
This is not about
Senate
President
level
Trump.
Or at a presidential level. You'll never. Or at a
It's
House
not
level.
about President Trump. It's
Mail-in
about our
voting
election
is a
process.
Disaster. One thing
We
that
have to get
happened
this
very
right,
quickly,
guys.
We won all the state houses. We won Congress, everything, and Kevin McCarthy gives me a massive amount of credit for what happened. Well, look, we're supposed to lose seats. We didn't lose one seat, and we gained many, and others were leading in others. And by the way, you know why the votes aren't in yet on like 5 or 6 others? Because the mail-in voting is all screwed up on congressional races. And we held the Senate, okay? And
Yep.
I'm the only one. They say it's statistically impossible. I led the charge. We won state houses, we won Congress, we won the Senate, and I lost. They say it's statistically impossible for that to happen.
It's all quite extraordinary, Mr. President. We want to thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for your work on Operation Warp Speed. You told us we would have a vaccine by year end, and now we've got 3. Thank you so much, President
Thank you
Donald
very
Trump.
much. Thank you very much, Maria. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Joining me right now with analysis of what we heard from the president is Judge Ken Starr.